quickly explaining this extra homework, SGI number 1. Now notice there is nothing to distribute on the outside, so you simply could rewrite it without the parentheses. You have y to the 1 times y to the 5th, so the answer is y to the 6th. And that's it. Let's move on. Number 3, doing the odd ones here. Again, there is no exponent on the outside of the parenthesis, right? So you don't even need the parentheses. You could just rewrite it without parentheses. You'll have negative 7 times x squared. Then since there's a times between the parentheses, you could drop a multiplication and also rewrite the x to the 4th. So your final answer is negative 7 x to the 6th. Let's move on to number 5. Too easy. Answer is m to the 6th. There's a 1 right there. Add the exponents. Let's move on to number 6. 7 actually. So on this one, again, there is no parenthesis on the outside to distribute in. There's no exponent on the outside to distribute in. So you could just rewrite everything without the parentheses. So you really have 2 times a squared times 8 times a. Let's rearrange it. Let's put the 2 times 8 together. And then let's put the a to the 2nd times a right next to each other, which is really a to the 1. So you're going to end up with the final answer, 16 a to the 3rd. Too easy. Moving on to number 9. Once again, nothing to distribute. I think this whole front side of the worksheet, there's nothing to distribute in. So you could rewrite them without parentheses and rearrange them if you want. So I want to write x squared, and then I want to write this other x, put it right next to it. But before that, I want to put the 4 out in front. And then I want to write my y's. So I have a y right here, and also a y to the 3rd right there. So this is just rearranging, and I'm showing my work. Once you get really good at this, you don't even have to show your work. You could just start adding up the exponents on the, like right here, x to the 2nd, and x is going to be x to the 3rd. So you're going to jump straight to your answer. So your answer is 4, the coefficient 4, x to the 3rd, y to the 4th. Now, why is it x to the 3rd? Because the 2 plus 1 is that 3 that we got on the x's. And then on the y's, you have a 1 right here and a 3 right here. 1 plus 3 is 4 also. Not also, but it's 4. Let's move on, number 11. Again, no exponent on the outside, so we could rewrite everything. And I want to put it in order, might as well. I want to put this negative 4 and this negative 5 right next to each other, being multiplied with each other. And then I'm going to put the x to the 3rd right here, times this x to the 7th over here. And when we do the negative 4 times negative 5, we really get a positive 20. When we do x to the 3rd times x to the 7th, we know rule 1 says we could add the exponents and get x to the 10th. So final answer is 20 x to the 10th. Let's move on to number 13. 13 is a little more interesting. Again, there's still nothing to distribute from the outside to the inside, so we could just rewrite everything without parentheses, and let me rearrange things. For example, I want to take this 5 and this 1/5. Those are coefficients, those are numbers. I want to put them together, 5 times 1/5. And then I want to take the a squared and the a and put them together, a squared times a. Then I want to take the b and put it together with this b. So I want to put b times b. And then I want to represent the c to the 3rd times c to the 4th down here, c to the 3rd times c to the 4th. So let's go through and do the math. With the coefficients, the 5 times 1/5, that cancels out and you end up with just a 1, right? You don't even have to write the 1 on your answer because 1 times anything is the same thing. It doesn't change anything. So let's move on to the a's. When I go a squared times a, adding the exponents, I get a to the 3rd. When I go b times b, I get b squared. And when I go c to the 3rd times c to the 4th, add the exponents, you get c to the 7th. That is rule 1 when you're adding exponents. That is your final answer right there. You could, of course, put a 1 if you wanted to represent the 5 times 1/5. I don't think they put that on your answers, though. So you don't need that 1. It could just be a to the 3rd, b to the 2nd, c to the 7th. Let's move on to 15. 15, once again, nothing to distribute. So there is no rule 3 on this front side. You don't distribute anything. So you could just rewrite everything without parentheses, and you could rearrange them. Again, I'm going to start with the coefficient 10 times negative 2. I want to write that out. 10 times negative 2. I know my answer is going to have a negative 20 in front of there. Let me move on to the x's. X to the third times x. Let me write that out. X to the third times x. Let's go for the y's. You have a y here and a y to the fifth there. So it's 1y times y to the fifth. And last but not least, we have the z to the second times z. Let me write that out. Z to the second times z. Okay, so we know our answer. 10 times negative 2 is negative 20. X to the third times x is x to the what? Fourth. How about y to the 1 times y to the fifth? Y to the sixth. And last but not least, z to the third. There we go. That is our final answer. Front side's pretty easy. Let's check out the back side. Right here we do have exponents on the outside of the parenthesis, which is either going to lead to rule 2 or rule 3. Rule 2 just says a power to a power you multiply, and that's exactly what we're doing right here on number 1. The answer is y to the 10th, right? And be ready for the quiz. It might have like y to the 5th to the 2nd to the 3rd, power to a power to a power. Just continue to multiply through. Moving on to number 3. 3 is interesting. Okay, so we're going to do the power to a power first. So x to the 2nd to the 5th, what is that? Just doing this, what do I get? X to the 10th. Everybody write that down. And then bring down the rest. Now notice there is no exponent out here to multiply with the 3. So you just bring down the x to the 3rd. You don't need the parentheses anymore. So times x to the 3rd. And then you use rule 1. X to the 10th times x to the 3rd is what? X to the 13th. Thank you very much. Move on, number 5. Fun stuff. Number 5. We have the outside exponent of 3. We're going to distribute it to each and every exponent on the inside. Now keep in mind there's a 1 right there and a 1 on the A. And not only that, guys, if this negative sign's throwing you off, let's think about this. We have a negative on the inside of a parentheses. We have an odd exponent on the outside. Is the answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. It's going to be negative, right? Because a negative times a negative times a negative takes you back to a negative. Okay. Now we already came up with that conclusion yesterday that if you have an odd exponent with the negative on the inside, it will be negative. If you have an even exponent with the negative on the inside, it will be positive. Because if it were even, if you expand it, you'll be able to pair up all the negatives and everything changes to positive. So anyway, we already know our answer is going to be negative, so I might as well throw a negative sign in front of my answer. Now when I distribute, I'm going to take this 3 and multiply it by the 1. So I really end up with 3 to the 3rd. And then I take the 3, multiply it by 1 right there, you get a to the 3rd as well. And take the 3, multiply it by 4, you get b to the 12th. Now the only other thing you could do is 3 to the 3rd. That's 3 times 3, which is 9, times 3 is 27. So the final answer is negative 27, a to the 3rd, b to the 12th. That's an ugly 3, I apologize. Jumping to number 7. Once again, outside exponent needs to get distributed to the inside. This 2 goes to the 4, which there's an invisible 1, and then multiplied by that 2 right there. So you get 4 to the 2, a to the 4th, and then since there is nothing to distribute out here, there is no power to a power, you just rewrite the b to the 3rd without parentheses. And that's all you could do. You can't combine the a to the 4th with the b to the 3rd, but you can simplify 4 squared. The answer is 8, right? 16. Just checking to see if you guys are awake. So 16, a to the 4th, b to the 3rd is your final answer on 7. Let's move on to number 9. Distributing. Take that 5, put it right there and right there. Power to a power you multiply. So x to the 10th, y to the 20th. Done. Number 11. 11 starts getting a little more challenging. That's why we have calculators, right? First of all, this is a negative number inside of the parentheses. Is this going to end up being positive or negative because of this power of 3? It's going to be negative. And how about this one? It's negative also, and the power of 3, is this going to be positive or negative? Negative. So I really have a negative number at the end of it all times a negative number at the end of it all, which means that my answer is going to be positive. Okay, so my answer is positive. I don't even have to worry about those negative signs really. But I do need to distribute the outside exponent to each and every exponent on the inside and multiply them. So right there, right there, right there, I want to end up with 4 to the 3rd, x to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. Now I could already, if I've concluded that I end up with a positive answer, I could just ignore these negatives, right? I could ignore them because I've already concluded that it's going to be positive. But if you want to keep them, you could bring them down, because at the end of it all, we're going to multiply them, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So it's totally up to you guys if you want to conclude that it's positive from the beginning, or if you want to keep that negative sign till the end, and then it'll turn to positive later. So on the other one, let's distribute the 3, put it on the 2, so you're going to end up with 2 to the 3rd and x to the 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. Power to a power, we multiply. Now it's just a question of rearranging, okay, and simplifying. So I do have negative 4 to the 3rd power times negative 2 to the 3rd power times this x and that x. So that's x to the 3rd times x to the 6th. Let's not forget about the y to the 3rd. That's all by itself right there. So doing the math with the calculator, 4 to the 3rd, or without a calculator, 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is negative 64. So this right here is negative 64. And then I need to multiply that by negative 2 to the 3rd, which is negative 8. And then bring down and combine the x to the 3rd times x to the 6th. That is x to the 9th. Bring down the y to the 3rd. And the only other thing we could do is multiply 64 times 8, 512. So final answer is positive 512, x to the 9th, y to the 3rd. Let's move on, number 13. 13, oh man, that's ugly. All right, we'll do it with the calculator. So over here on this side, actually let's distribute the 3 to each and every term. So on the first parenthesis, I'm going to get 25 to the 3rd, and that's not 75. Unfortunately, it's going to be some ridiculously huge number. That's 25 times 25 times 25. Then we have a to the what? 6, and b to the 3. There you go. And then we're going to distribute the 2 to each and every exponent. Now, a lot of people get freaked out because there's a fraction here. As long as there's no addition or subtraction. So what we really do have is division and multiplication, which is totally fine, because Rule 3 says on the board, if you have parentheses with an exponent on the outside and no addition or subtraction on the inside, you could distribute that outside exponent to each inside exponent, and you have to multiply because of Rule 2, power to a power. So what I want to do is represent all my exponents on the inside. It's a 1 to the 1, a 5 to the 1, an a to the 1, a b to the 1, and an f to the 1. And I want to take that power of 2 and multiply on each of those. And I'm going to end up with 1 to the 2nd over 5 to the 2nd, a to the 2nd, b to the 2nd, f to the 2nd. Now the only other thing we could do here is 1 to the 2nd and 5 to the 2nd. That's really 1 over 25. And we still have the a squared, b squared, f squared. And what we could do now is rewrite and rearrange everything. But before we rewrite, the 25 to the 3rd power with the calculator, 25 times 25 times 25, that equals 15,625. That's ugly. Okay, so we have 15,625. I just did this on a calculator. And it's also a to the 6th, b to the 3rd. So what we have now on a calculator, what we have to do is 15,625. We need to multiply that by 1 over 25. Now multiplying by 1 over 25 is the same thing as dividing by 25. But let me write the rest. This a to the 6th, I'm going to bring it down. And I'm going to bring down the a squared. Then I'm going to bring down this b to the 3rd. And this b squared. And last but not least, that f squared, bring it down. So on a calculator, if you go 15,625 and you divide it by 25, that's the quickest way to do it. Divide it by 25 or multiply by 1/5 or 1 over 25th. But if you divide by 25, you get 625. Final answer, 625. A to the 8th, B to the 5/5, F to the 2nd. That's your final answer for 13. I'm going to try to avoid these ridiculously huge numbers on the quiz tomorrow. 15. Distribute outside exponent to each and every inside. Right there, we get 2 to the 3rd. Right there, we get x to the 9th. Right there, we get y to the 6th. Right there, we get z to the 6th. Then over here in blue, 4, distribute it, you'll get x to the 8th. Distribute it, you get z to the 4th. Now it's just a question of doing whatever we can. 2 to the third is really 8. And then you go x to the 9th and x to the 8th. Instead of rewriting it, I'm just going to do it. That's x to the 17th. And then the y, I'm just going to bring it down. There is no other y to multiply it by. And of course, the z to the 6th and the z to the 4th, that becomes z to the 10th. You add exponents when you multiply. Now again, I didn't show my work here. I didn't rearrange everything the way I was on the previous questions.